You're on.
Thank you, sir. Appreciate it.
You're welcome.
Oh, I see myself on the screen. Look at that. Very cool. Very cool. All right. Well, thank y'all for having me. I'm so excited to be here. This is, I think I've spoken to your group. It's been some years. I want to say like 2022. I think I spoke to them.
23, May.
23. Okay. Yeah. Yeah. Love talking with folks like yourselves. I'm a little intimidated, I'll be honest, because y'all know what you're talking about. Usually I talk to a lot of civilians, non-plant growing, outdoor hippie types. So I don't want to pretend like I know more than anybody, certainly up here, but I'll share what I do. You also have one of the pillars of our beekeeping community as part of your organization, Mark Kevin. He's been doing this longer than I have and very well known in our community. So it's great to have him here. I think he'll keep me on the beam. I reckon, right? So happy to let's see. I don't know if this will play sound. It
My name
should.
is Charlie Agar, and I'm a beekeeper in the Texas Hill Country.
They got me.
I help people with nuisance bee problems and rescue bees from sticky situations.
I think I got some bees on me.
With bee populations in decline, it's more important now than ever to save these bees. Beekeeping has taken me all over the state of Texas, and working with bees has given me the opportunity to meet some incredible people along the way. I'm always learning, experiencing new things, and working hard. Things can get a little crazy, but I love it. Oh, yeah. Sugar.
This is just wild. I love it.
I love it. We're solving somebody's problem. We're putting these bees to work where they're meant to work, somewhere safe and away from people. This is what it's all about. Retreat. Woo!
So has anybody seen our show on PBS? A few people have, right? So it's kind of like, it hasn't reached, like Hollywood status yet, but over the last many years, we produced a TV series starting in like 2017, all about bees and beekeeping, focused on bee removal, focused on Texas. Mark was in an episode talking about small cell bees, his specialty. We went out to the bat cave near Bracken and met his bees. And so the opportunity there for me was so cool. I got to go lots of different places, get behind the scenes with all these kind of quirky beekeepers, and we are quirky. You think naturalists are different? You think birders are different? You hang out with beekeepers. We are a special breed. So it's been an awesome journey. But what I focus on and what drives me more than anything is this little critter, right? The Apis mellifera, the non-native species, if we're talking about, it's very welcome non-native species. Done really well here. Right? They've done incredibly well. They've become very much part of our agricultural system, and have adapted to walls and trees and the underneath sheds and soffits of homes. And that's really the genesis of our business. So I'll show you a little bit of video of the kind of things I do. So here's a little swarm of bees, a bivouac of bees, actually New Braunfels Police Department. These bees were looking for a new home. And so we take them down, cut that limb, and then I give them a new home. Woof, just share them. I put a nice box there that will attract them. And these are trained bees, so they run. This is a removal from a farm implement. It's a game. And my helper Chris is working with me. We go in and smoke them. The bees kind of clung to his head for some reason, but then he goes and finds the queen. This kid is he's like the Zen master of beekeeping. He's amazing. We're able to catch the queen. And then we get these big mess removals. This was from a door into a building, and there was just tons and tons of honey. And we come in and just take that all apart. This was a church outbuilding near San Marcos. And just messy work. And then we bring the bees back. We orient their comb into some frames, and then we use a bee vacuum and we drop them in. And Bob's your uncle. We got a new hive of bees. And so we do this again and again and again. I started my first year in bees. I got a hive in 2013 just as a hobbyist. And I moved back to Texas. This was in Idaho. I was living in like the agricultural part of Idaho, southern Idaho, Twin Falls, Idaho, if that rings a bell. And went to a bee class, bought bees and just got totally hooked, moved back to Texas. And I had a friend with bees in his wall. And we just took off from there. Should I close this little window, by the way? Like,
You can minimize it, yeah.
should I just minimize it? Would that help? Is that a little better?
Yep.
Okay, so it went from a very small hobby, one hive in Idaho, went to bee removal in Texas, and I posted a video of myself doing bee removal in Texas, and right away, it became a business. My phone started ringing, and got connected with the beekeeping community, many, many mentors, Mark included, folks who've been doing this a lot longer than me. I just tagged along with them and learned the ropes of bee removal. And that really quickly became a business. 2014, 15, 16, I went from 0 to 60 hives and took off. My wife, the poor woman, she's just like, what is this beekeeping thing? She's allergic to bees, of course. Yeah. But she just tolerates me. And in my life, I've had many obsessions. There was a time where I lived for whitewater kayaking, right? Whitewater kayaking, if I was either working or I was in a boat. I lived in the Northeast. So I've done a lot of different things. The bees have been probably the biggest obsession. And I think it's going to be take me to the end of my life because I just fell in love. So we grew a business, right? Bee removal. We got to like 200, 300 hives. We made the TV series, hoping to make gazillions of dollars, and we made hundreds of dollars. But the TV piece has been like wonderful. It's so much fun. We're hoping to make more. If you do want to watch the series, it is currently season 2 is on PBS. So go to it broadcasts all over the country, but you can just go to pbs.org or use the app on your phone. Search Charlie B. So if tonight is not enough, I got 8 more hours of me. Are you ready? So we started a business out of a 2-car garage in New Braunfels, looking for land forever and ever and ever, and finally got lucky and found a parcel near New Berlin, if that rings a bell, south of here, about 12-minute drive from here. Off Smith-Thaler Road, we are on Smith-Thaler Road, Sweet Home Road, 467, 775. So sandy, loam, soil, and it's great because there is soil, right? I lived in New Braunfels forever with rock, so I'm grateful to have soil and watch things grow. We now have 25 acres, and we just bought 10 acres adjacent, and we've built a shop and a store. So we sell bees, we sell equipment. I do classes, workshops. Every Saturday morning, 9 a.m., we do a free workshop for beekeepers. It's a friend of mine calls it Bee Church. Hallelujah. We all get together and talk bees. Try to be kind of a hub for the beekeeping community. I love bees, but I also kind of love beekeepers. Like I said, we're a quirky bunch, and they're my people. They're inventive. They're entrepreneurial typically. They want to turn a buck with their bees. They are opinionated. Fiery. I bet you can't relate to that here in this room. You probably have some strong opinions about what's going to work in nature and the garden and all that kind of thing. So yeah, we gather there. We do small group tours. Brenda was out at our shop just recently for a small group tour. I do private lessons, introductory lessons, and then help people get into bees. Come on out if you're bee curious. Come on out. We'd love to have you. We produce. People think bees too. They think honey, right? Oh, you're a beekeeper. You make honey, and we really make very little money as a business with honey. I love honey. Honey is a market byproduct of successful bees and keeping healthy bees. You're going to produce some surplus honey. Our biggest piece of business is helping people get their ag valuation, right? The 1D1 open space law since 2012. You can have cattle, you can have goats. Since 2012, you can have bees on 5 to 20 acres. So people pay me to bring bees out, manage them, and for a tax savings. So that business, totally unique to Texas. I go to national conferences and conventions and tell people how much I make per hive per year. as a lease program. And they're like, how could you do that? Like, they have nothing like that. And there's a few other states that have incentives for people to do bees, but nothing quite like the tax savings you get in Texas. And then second is, number one is ag leasing, 300 plus, we're about 400 hives now. And then the second is bee removal. So we're crawling under trailers and climbing up trees and getting bees out. And it does cost. That's the classic call. Hey, I got bees in my garage. You can have them if you want them. The conversation goes from there. Like, it does cost, right? It's kind of grungy work, and but we try to take good care of people. And then, of course, all the other things we do. So, yeah, if you have questions about bees or anything bees, just let me know. And so this, I mentioned 25 acres. So if you look at this, the land that was cleared, that was what we bought originally. And then where it's like mesquited in the back. So that corner parcel is 15 acres. And then where it's kind of mesquite, thicker mesquite in the back, we bought those 10 up to a row crop field. Our neighbor's a big horse lady. We've got cattlemen all around us. But we have, poured a lot of concrete. Had some impact, obviously, put roads in, but this is in the middle there is our retail shop. On the left of the screen is our little house. We built a small house. A friend of mine looked at the footprint of our house, and it's like 1,000 square feet. Like, why would you build such a small house? I'm like, it's two of us. It's perfectly fine. We're perfectly happy. We love our little house. And then we have like shipping container work area out back. And we're trying to be, it takes money and time to do what we want it to be. I want it to be a pollinator paradise, right? And I want it to be resplendent, natural gardens and native plants and flowers and all that good stuff. It just takes time, right? So we're learning and growing as we go. So y'all could be we joined the Native Plant Society. Do y'all get along? Yeah. Okay. So
We all been out.
y'all belong. Okay. I've gone. We've gone to a few meetings, enjoyed that. So that. But I've learned so much. AgriLife has been a wonderful resource for us. I took their land management course here about all the options for critters and cattle, and they want you to get critters more than anything. But learned a lot, and I continue to learn. For a kid who grew up in the suburbs, to have 25 acres is pretty wild. So, and we have a blast. We love having people out. Like I said, want to be kind of an environmental showcase in time, and it will take time, but we're getting there. But we're here to talk about bees, my beautiful Apis mellifera. They're amazing critters. And bee biology, we could, people get PhDs in this stuff. We could go down deep rabbit holes, but the critter, the bee herself, is just incredible. If you look at the photo on the left, that's how they produce wax, right? They have very active glandular systems. So just that individual bee can churn out these little flakes of wax and build. They're master builders, right? They build their comb very quickly. We did a bee removal recently from a lady's, the bees went in above her garage, right? And they typically go back into the space between the two floors, first and second floor. And she had video to show us that the bees just arrived, right? Which is usually the case. People say, we just saw the bees recently, and I open up the wall and they've been there for 20 years. This lady was right. She really had a swarm of bees look for a new home, move in. And it was 7 days later, a week later, we opened it up, and it was 5 gallons worth of beautiful white new comb. Produced just like that from the abdomen of the bee, right? She takes in nectar, she spits out flakes of wax, chews it, and they're just incredible builders. They're a payload machine. The picture in the center, she's carrying pollen, right? They carry their own weight and fly. So it'd be like if I carried 200 something pounds but was able to fly. Pretty incredible. Obviously they sting, another gland right in their body. Everybody been stung by bees. That's the biggest question I get when I go to schools. Do you get stung by bees? And I just show them my hands. If you look closely, I'm all dinged up. I go gloveless quite often and get beat up badly. They do die when they sting, right? So they don't really want to sting you, but if you mess with them, they will defend their home. They have a proboscis. a tube, much like a butterfly, right? They can slurp up material to carry with them. The amazing thing is they have 5 eyes. They have three simple eyes on the top of their head, and then they have these compound lens eyes on the side of their head. So where we see, we might see a yellow flower here, right? That flower on the right would look yellow to us. To the bee, they see the ultraviolet spectrum. So they fly out and they see that, that field of flowers, and it just lights up. Hey, food, food, food. Come and get it. Come and get it. They beat their wings 200 times per second. I can't even fathom that. That's why they buzz like 200 times per second. And that's how they can carry so much weight. And you got to remember always with bees, that collaborative piece. They don't work alone. They basically give their life for the hive. And so statistics like one bee makes 1/12 of a teaspoon of honey in their lifetime, right? So when you're squirting that on your oatmeal, just remember that's a lot of hard work for the bees to do. So humans, we've been messing with bees for a really, really long time. So the image on the left is from I think Spain, and the one on the right is somewhere in Africa. So humans have realized, hey, why are these bees? Why are there so many? Let's do something with these guys. We've been kind of robbing bees and taking from natural hives for quite a long time. A friend of mine has that Spanish one as a tattoo on his whole arm. And I'm not a tattoo guy, but I'm like, that's about the coolest tattoo you could ever get. We've been playing with bees for a long time. For a long time, there's like great monastic traditions of playing with bees. We worked with bees in look at those baskets. We actually went to the New Braunfels Renaissance Fair, and we set up a booth. Last year was the first time, but I'm the honey monk. We wear monk robes, and then we put together a medieval beekeeper's hat and went over, sold a lot of honey, my goodness. And we did candle rolling with kids and stuff. So there's this ancient tradition where people kept bees in what are called skeps, right? Those baskets. The basket, they'd set it out, the bees move in, build their comb. But really to do anything with that comb, they had to basically cut it all apart, right? And there were lots of systems people tried to kind of hack that and improve it. It wasn't until Mr. Lorenzo Langstroth, my dear old buddy he was a pastor, he lived in Philadelphia. He's credited with, and I think a lot of people contributed to this process of creating frames, right? The frames that hang in the hive, the movable frame hive in boxes so that we can kind of manipulate the frames. I think that's about the only real advance in bee technology in the last 500 years, right? Beekeepers, we love to invent things, right? We love to make a jig and make a hack and do all these things. But really, I think Mr. Langstroth was the only one who really made a big difference by being able to keep bees in a managed way in boxes. But this is how commercial beekeeping looks like in the United States. It's a big, big business. Beekeeping is agribusiness. It is flatbed trucks and forklifts and H2A visa guest workers from Mexico, Honduras, El Salvador. It is big, big business. This is a friend of mine in East Texas, Chris Moore. We migrate our bees around the country, right? So the big commercial operations are trucking their bees all around the country. The big one is California in January, starting in January. That's the largest mass migration of bees in the world. 2 million hives come from all across the United States to send on the Central Valley of California for what? Does anybody know? Almonds, yeah, great. Almonds. They call them almonds in California. I don't know what they say because they shake them to get the almonds out of the tree. They say they shake them so hard they shake the L out of them, so they call them almonds. But seriously, no, the growers and the beekeepers call them almonds. It's it's a thing. So these guys, we've only been doing this type of monoculture agriculture, what, the 40s, 50s, post-World War II, right? And then we started migrating bees in the 50s, and then it became kind of a steady industry. This industry's in trouble. I mean, I go to the conferences and these guys all get together, and my wife calls it the Chicken Little Conference. Well, the sky is falling. We're gonna lose all our, and there's all these subsidies propping these guys. It's a tough business to be in. I'm connected to that business in that, like, I'll buy bees from a commercial operation, and we buy queens from queen breeders. But I'm like a non-migratory. 300, 400 hives to these kind of operations is nothing. They tens of thousands of hives. So, question.
Do you want to wait till the end for questions, or can we do it?
Oh, I'm not shy. Go ahead. Yeah. If I'm going to talk about it later, I'll say so. That's it.
Charlie, repeat the question.
I will. Yes, sir. Yeah. Go ahead.
You just said queen breeders. I thought they kind of controlled who the queen was going to be. How do they do queen breeding?
Great question. I'll get into queens a little bit in a minute. The question was about queen breeders and how do they control it. Queens are magical. They're just amazing. So we're getting into queen breeding in our operation right now, so I can talk a little bit about that. But queens are fantastic, and there is a whole industry of queen breeders out there. So yeah, big business. I always say too, think about your local grocery store. This is what it looks like with bees. This is a classic slide in the bee world. What it looks like with bees, look what it looks like without bees, right? So all these bees that get migrated all around the country, they're purposely pollinating for a fee, all these different crops, right? So, and again, honeybees being non-native, they are that you could consider them an agricultural commodity, like cattle. But look at all the good things that go away, right? We need all those good things. So the other thing too is that bees are not they're not domesticated. So the bees that I force to live in a box and do my will, do my bidding, they are there at their own decision. They are not a domesticated. We've altered them genetically. We've bred bees, and there's been a lot of control. But whereas the wolf wandered near the fire and took a few bites of food, tens of thousands of years ago, and now we've got pugs wearing bras, or the feral pig became the domesticated pig. That their genetics changed a lot, whereas the honeybee is a honeybee. So I keep bees, so they're not domesticated, right? You can't keep a good bee down. I keep bees at the San Antonio Zoo. It's been a wonderful project. I've been working with them for years. We have a display hive in the wall of the zoo. It's a preschool area at the zoo called Discovery Place, and all pollinator themed. And then we have 2 hives out in the courtyard that we manage like regular beehives. And I've confirmed with the zookeepers that I'm the only critter keeper at the San Antonio Zoo whose animal goes out to hunt at night, or goes out to hunt on their own, excuse me, right? They don't let lions just go find prey, right? But honeybees, we do feed them, we supplement their food, but they've got to fly out of that courtyard, if they're in a courtyard, fly out of that courtyard and go out into Brackenridge Park. And sometimes they reproduce without, beyond our control. So they're essentially a wild creature that we're just kind of responding to, right? That's basically. So take inside a hive. It is a business, self-managing business inside the hive. They are very adaptive. They're very resilient. They have a lot of stresses. They've had 100 million years of research and development, so they are pretty resilient and about figuring out their. In fact, as a beekeeper, I think a big part of being a good beekeeper is just getting out of the way. I have hives that I'll neglect, and I'll come back and find they're thriving, and the ones that I'm meticulously taking care of are suffering. Or I go in the middle of summer in Texas where there's nothing growing, right? We call it the dearth in beekeeping, and my bees are just gasping for air. And I go cut somebody's barn wall that's 10 foot high, 12 foot wide. Bees have been there 30 years, and there's tens of thousands of bees in there. They're doing great. So they are a very resilient critter. Again, without going deep into bee biology, it's important to know that, every hive has one queen, right? And the workers, upper left, predominantly you'll see workers, they're non-reproductive females. The queen is a little bit like the reproductive organ of the hive, and the drones are useless, shiftless wasters trying to mate. So I think some of us can relate to that. So the superorganism concept of the beehive, you got to remember that the animal is not the individual bee, that incredible bee that produces honey and all this stuff. It's the collective, right? My friend George says bees are communists, but they're happy communists. That they essentially give their life for the hive. Termites do the same thing. Ants do the same thing. They call it eusocial behavior. So it's the colony that is trying to thrive. It's the colony that wants to reproduce too, and we'll talk about that in a second. So mama, upper right, she is an egg-laying machine. She lays egg. I was a fifth grader. I tell Brenda this. There's a fifth grader at a school in shirts who raised his hand. You know how kids, let's go. I got a question. And it's never a question. It's always, I'm going to say something that I feel like saying, right? He said, I know two things about queens. They lay eggs and they make smells. And I thought, that is the most brilliant thing I've ever heard, because it's exactly the case. Queens lay eggs. She's the reproductive engine, but she also gives off her pheromone, her perfume that kind of governs the hive, right? So that's her job. Lower left, that's that process of going from egg to larva to pupa, common in many insects. So eggs teeny tiny, like a filament of a fishing line, and then a little C-shaped larva. The worker bees inside will feed that larva, and the larvae plural, pupae plural, and then the last stage is the pupa or pupae, lower right. A frame like that, covered with all those bees are underneath there. They're going through metamorphosis, just like a butterfly and a chrysalis, and all that cardboard-looking brood, we call it, is about to emerge. Baby bees are going to chew their way out and go to work. When I see that in my hives, yay, great, they're taking off. Wonderful, wonderful. So, but the hive itself, yeah, it's like a factory. It's like a resource managing factory, right? The resources they manage, pollen is their protein. Upper left, they pack pollen in dry, they pack it into cells, they ferment it with a little bit of nectar to store it. Lower right, nectar. Nectar comes in wet. Nectar from flowers is very runny. A little bit like the hummingbird food. If anybody feeds hummingbirds, it's much like that, 1-to-1 simple syrup. The bees, to make honey, they basically dehydrate it, they chew it. They pass it one bee, a little bit like kneading dough. They pass it one bee to the other. They chew on it. They use their wings to dehydrate it, and they make it. And they chew a little pollen into it. They chew some enzymes from their spit, and then they cure it right in that cell. Once it's nice and dry and thick, they will cap it over. So just above where it says nectar, where it's white, they'll cap it over, and that is now honey. Right, that's preserved for all time. They do drink water. Upper right, they also use water to cool the hive, much like we sweat. They will spit water on the frames and then use their wings to evaporate the water and then cool the hive. So, and then of course, the last thing is propolis. Does anybody know what propolis comes from? Or ever heard of propolis? Yeah.
Plant compounds, like secondary metabolites?
Yes, yeah. Sap, yeah. Plant compounds, what are they called? Secondary metabolites? I like that. I learn new words every day. I love it. So they bring in sap and compounds from plants. It's very sticky. You may have seen propolis tinctures in health food stores. All kinds of antibacterial, antimicrobial properties. The bees glue everything together with propolis. So, and of course, every hive has a queen. Can you see her? Brenda knows where she is because she came to the class. So she is. So the queen is right here. She's just a special female. Every female bee can become a queen if she's fed royal jelly, and so she's sort of selected to be the queen. So, in a good year, I might start with hives looking a bit like this, and toward the end of June, middle of July, they might look like this in a very good year. Last year, for me, was not a very good year, right? It was real dry. I have crop insurance. I have an insurance policy for rain insurance. Turns out betting against rain in the state of Texas is a really good bet, right? So I get a pretty big fat subsidy. And so the bees will build, and then essentially anything above those first two boxes is for old Charlie to take if I feel like it, right? So those are called honey supers. Anything that's put in, and we're adding honey supers right now. This is the time that we've had all this wonderful rain. We're having a pretty good year so far. So the bees forage, and it's amazing how quickly they fill those boxes. When they're full, they look like this. So this is a frame of honey, medium-sized frame, about 6 5/8 inches high. And a frame like that would probably be like 4 pounds, maybe 4.5, 5 pounds, depending how thick. What do you think, Mark? Something like that. And you can take and harvest that honey. Pretty simple process. You just have to uncap it, use a knife, serrated knife or a scraper to take that capping off. It's like taking a cork out of a bottle, and then put that into an extractor. So spin the honey right off those frames. So, and then you got raw honey. So my first year at the New Braunfels Farmers Market was just like, wow, this is the greatest. I can make money with bees. Holy smokes. I just thought that was wonderful. I love sharing honey with people. At the time I was in sales, and so I would give honey to my customers. So it was kind of a neat novelty. But honey for me isn't really the goal. Like I said, I'm a business with bees, but really what drives it all is the health of the bees. My bees got to stay pretty healthy and do well. So the other thing, bees also, they produce honey, they produce all these products. They also produce, of course, more bees. Think of the term colony, right? So the colonists, the pilgrims left, the mothership of England and took to Plymouth Rock, right, and planted a colony, right? So bees do the very same thing. They take a small, usually about half of their colony when they get big, and that original queen who's done so well, they say, great, you're promoted to the next colony, right? Churches do that, right? They seed colony, right? You've heard of seeding churches, right? So the colony gets big, and it doesn't just keep getting bigger. They reproduce by swarming, and then they'll hang somewhere in a bivouac, like the video I showed you, right? Those bees at the New Braunfels Police Department were hanging on a limb. They're just hanging there looking for a new home, and then they find a covered dry space and they move in. Back in the hive, we have a hive with no queen, right? So the bees will quickly go and find one of those very young female eggs, or very young larvae, I should say, and they'll produce a queen cell. Looks like a peanut hanging off the bottom of the frame or the middle of the frame. They'll produce multiple queens. The queens then emerge and then murder one another. This is the awesome part. So the actual term for it is sororicide. So think of like a sorority where they're all like so probably an apt comparison, maybe if you hung around sororities, but the queen has a stinger that is essentially a needle, well, like a lance. She can sting multiple times. So she goes and jabs the cells that her sisters live in. She plays a really deadly game of Marco Polo to find them. She gives off a piping sound, and we bank queens, and we have queens in a bank, and they're all piping to each other, and the piping sounds very cute. What they're saying is, "Where are you? I want to kill you." Right. So then she pipes, they pipe back, and then they'll fight them. It can be but one queen per hive, right? So this is where it gets kind of medieval. They fight to the death. Then that virgin queen, she goes on a maiden flight, right? So she leaves the colony. She goes, and she somehow knows where the boys hang out. The boys somehow know where to hang out. They call them drone congregation areas, otherwise known as the Singles Bar or the Mall in the 80s, if you remember those days. She zips through their area and they say, Queen, and they chase her like a comet, right? It's just a plume of drones, and that's where it's the fastest. The drones are bigger, have better eyes, faster, stronger. They chase her down and mate with her in the air, way up high, and they fall. They die when they mate. So the drones, the boys don't have a stinger. They have their reproductive parts instead of a stinger, and that breaks off, and they joyfully fall to the ground because they won. And then and she mates with like 15 to 20 drones midair, and then comes back to the hive. She is the new fully mated queen, right? So pretty awesome process. Then she'll build the hive up again, right, as the new queen, and at some point they'll say, we're big enough, off you go, let's make a new queen, right? So for our purposes, we are in spicy bee country. Mark's dealt with them more than I have, probably. Well, probably just as much. I deal with feral colonies of bees, and ever since the 90s, they're much maligned. The genetic that it was one guy named Warwick Kerr. He was a Brazilian scientist, went to South Africa and brought them back to Brazil to see if they could do better in a tropical climate. And he was right. The genetic is called Scutellata, but they're much maligned as the Africanized bee, killer bee. I actually quote Mark very often in my presentations because I said, I know a guy from South Africa. And what he says is in South Africa, we just call them bees. The Scutellata genetic is prevalent all up and down in the drier regions of Africa. Very successful, has no problem with this invasive mite that our bees deal with. So it has all kinds of beneficial properties. They're tough to deal with, right? They tend to reproduce pretty readily, but and they've got bad press, right? They get a lot of bad PR ever since this. I remember as a kid watching. Remember Fran Tarkenton had that show, That's Incredible? He'd be like, the killer bees are coming. I swear, as a kid, I was petrified. I was like, they're going to come and they're going to kill us. And but since the 90s, that genetic's been here. And when you look at the subspecies of bees, they're much like dog breeds. They actually call them races of bees, and they interbreed. So you've got a Chihuahua, and you've got a Doberman Pinscher, and you've got a Rottweiler, and they all have their characteristics. This is, quote, again, maligning term, Africanized. This is kind of the habitat in the U.S. for the Scutellata genetic. I just call them spicy bees, and we're in the heart of it. So the bees that I take out of walls and trees tend to be a little bit spicy. And we tend to requeen them. You asked about raising queens. So there's a lot going on in the queen rearing world and the research world about trying to raise a type of bee that's resistant to some of the problems that bees deal with. And nobody's gotten there yet, right? But we try to buy queens that are resistant to a lot of problems. So we requeen our hives to be a little more gentle. But you've also probably heard of like colony collapse disorder, right? And the bees are dying. It's a general ethic that I hear from people. Hey, oh, you're a beekeeper. That's so great. It's important that you're a beekeeper. Aren't bees in trouble? Like, aren't we? And it's true. Bees have a lot of problems. Part of it, I think, comes from our agricultural system, right? And kind of artificially migrating bees around. It's complicated stuff. It's big business, so you can't really threaten big ag. But the way we have it, I've heard it called a bit of a house of cards, right? The way we kind of do ag these days with so many inputs and the like. And the funny thing too, every year, I used to be a newspaper reporter, and every year you get those newspaper stories, and those stories in the mostly TV news. In the wintertime, massive losses, massive losses. And beekeepers have experienced 75% last year, not this winter, but 2024, 25, some of the worst years. The loss rate was so high among commercial beekeepers. They have these massive losses. They make them up by dividing their colonies, and they can catch up. But there's so many stresses on these operations, and the amount of loss in the big commercial operations, 50, 60, 70%. We see a much lower loss rate in our bees, but we do lose bees. Pests and pathogens are the biggie, right? So I mentioned this mite. So the varroa mite sits on our bees. If I was a bee, it'd be like a fist-sized parasite living on the honeybee. They jump from a different species of bee from Southeast Asia, kind of a cousin of the bee, of our honeybee. Their territory never crossed. Obviously, humans crossed them, and so the mite jumped from the species of bee that evolved with this mite, and they coexist quite well. They jumped to the honeybee in the 90s, and boom, it's just precipitated all these. They carry disease, so viruses, deformed wing virus. We open up your colony and your hives, the bees have sticks instead of wings, and they can't fly, and they're not long for the world. So it's a pretty tough scenario. If you want to get beekeepers riled up, you start talking about mites. I mentioned we're a very opinionated lot, and so you get beekeepers together. There's folks who are let nature do its thing. Natural beekeeping. Let the hives that fail need to fail, right? And then they're right basically. Then there's folks who are commercial guys. They can't fail. Agriculture says we can't just let the entire bee population totally collapse. So we need to kind of prop them up. And I try to live somewhere in the middle, right? I'm so open to whatever would work. Dealing with this pest is just, there's nothing fun or interesting about it to me. It's interesting, I guess I should say, but it's not. I'd rather be more interested in watching my bees succeed and flourish. And like my mentor started beekeeping, he's been beekeeping 60 years. And he was in upstate New York, and he said, he's got a New York accent. He's Charlie, we just put the boxes out. And when we wanted to make more bees, we cut them in half. They made their own, no spicy bees, no pests and pathogens. The bees just produced honey. So I missed that window. But dealing with this critter, it cost me money, cost me time. Anything you do chemically with the hive stresses the bees. So it's a complicated deal, but that's a biggie. The other is pesticides, poor nutrition. We're pouring a lot of, this guy just poured a bunch of concrete in New Berlin, but we have a lot of land open. So, but we're pouring a lot of concrete in this part of the world. We are, the way we do our agriculture or the way we manage our properties, right? We use a lot of chemicals in those. And those really trickle down to pollinators in a big way. So climate, pressure, lots of things stacked up against the poor little honeybee, right? Again, people say sort of help. What can I do to help save the bees, right? So I get that a lot. Like I'm a gardener, and I have a beautiful property. I want bees, not for my ag. I just want bees because they're cool, which is true. But I want bees to pollinate my garden. And reality is, what you really want is native bees, frankly, right? Just keep growing that garden, right? The other thing, we just got into the business. We bought leafcutter bees from a breeder up in Washington State and set up native beehives. And it's my first year doing it. They're doing great. And so as far as I'm concerned, like if your interest is conservation, and if your interest is preservation of habitat and diversity, honeybees ain't it. Right? Honeybees are cool, but that'd be like saying, I've heard it said, saying save the bees is like saying, oh, okay, I want to protect the rare California condor, right? That cliff dwelling, there's only 500 of them left in the United States. So I'm going to raise chickens. right? That's what, that would be the equivalent of raising bees to protect pollinators, if that makes sense. It's more complicated than that, but what we can do is do things a little differently. I'm preaching to the choir here, certainly, right? So we talk a lot about, everyone's so excited about AI and AI use of water, and it is significant, and it is an issue, and it's use of land, those data centers. But look how much we use for landscape. They call it landscape watering. It's grass. We're growing green grass that we cut. And I don't know when that became cool. Our house growing up always had the worst lawn in the street. Now I look back and I'm so proud of my parents, apparently. But you know, if you let things leave things alone in the least, right? That would be a way to help me. So it's funny. I do a talk called "Don't Save the Bees" to gardening groups and stuff, because it's not what we need to do. We need to protect habitat. We need to take care, be good land stewards, right? That's what it comes down to. So if you build it, they will come. So when we think about pollinators, people jump right to bees, but there's so many, right? And so they all have their, and we've lost so many species of butterfly that were connected to a specific wildflower, right? They're just sort of gone. So we have kind of a Walmart, you know, Home Depot situation in nature. So anything we can do to encourage diversity. Bumblebees, my goodness, on the upper left, I've run into bumblebees in the last and I've been doing bee removal since 2014 in this area. And I had to buy a special suit to deal with bumblebees because I've been getting some bumblebee calls. And I'm so excited about that because I come in and bumblebees are cute, right? Furry little, oh, they're so flighty, the bumblebee, da, 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 da. Well, guess what? When they're in their colony, right, where they produce more bumblebees, they will tear you up. And they're about the size of a golf ball and they punch you. So I have to put on, the first time I did it, I wore 2 bee suits, but I relocated them. We took them out to our property. We had bumblebees all last summer. It was pretty awesome. The other, you know, butterflies, hummingbirds, native bees, all these species of native bees. Before the honeybee was, you know, brought to the colonies, we had thousands, when we still have thousands of species of native bees. So they'll do the work. And then like upper right, we've got Mexican honey wasp. I love dealing with Mexican honey wasps. Has anybody seen these before? They're great, right? They make these, I've seen them this big, no joke. We have an empty one right out in front of our shop, and they're awesome. We're right on the bleeding edge of their habitat, right? You don't see Mexican honey wasps in Dallas, right? It's down this way. They like heat. They're a teeny little pollinator. They do produce honey. They are eusocial, which means just like honeybees, they're collaborative and have queens. So they really fascinating. I go at night, clip the limb, throw them in a tote, take them out to my place, and set them up in trees. So we've got those everywhere. So again, like it's less about the bees for me. It's more about encouraging all these good natives. So that's enough for me. So check out the show, by the way, Charlie Bee. You can find us at charliebee.com. If you're interested, if you're bee curious, Saturday mornings we do the free workshop. I send out an email every week. So if you go to my website, drop your email in, we send out an email every week, usually me on a video doing something silly and kind of what's happening in the bees, what we're doing in our bees, and then kind of things happening in our shop and in the bee community. So love to have you all out. And I know you have some questions, I bet. So I'm open for questions. Yeah.
How bad is the mite problem in Texas right now?
How bad is the mite problem in Texas right now? I mean, it's always bad. I compare mites to worms on cattle. You just always have worms on cattle. So it's a question of, do you tolerate mite levels that are high? We tested a hive just yesterday, and they were like a 1%, which is they call it the threshold for you might want to do something about it, right? I'm not, because we're in honey production, so I'm going to kind of just leave them alone. Like I said, I like to do as little as I have to, because I'm also lazy. And like, it costs money, and at 400 hives, if I decide to put 2 poisonous strips in 400 hives, that's 400 hive visits, and at $4 a strip, it's a big decision. So if I can get away with not doing that, I'm definitely gonna do it. But there are also, with mites, there's all kinds of ways to fight mites. They call it mechanically. What interests me is fighting mites with genetics. So we're breeding bees now. I say we, I mean scientists are breeding bees that mirror the characteristics of the species that can handle mites, right? So they do things like they can detect the presence of mites in the hive, and they reproduce inside where the babies are, and they'll cannibalize that cell. They smell a bunch of mites, they're sensitive to the smell, and they'll cannibalize that cell. That's one trait. There's some that chase the mites around. There's other things like you can produce what's called a brood break, which basically means you cage your queen so she can't lay eggs. And in that period of a week or a week and a half, you have no new babies. And the mites need babies to survive, right? Then there's things like the species that can deal with mites drives the mites to the drones, to the boy bees, right? So, and nobody needs the boys, right? So let the boys get sick and die. That's exactly their strategy. So you can raise male bees. There's a special way to do that. So there's nuanced ways to deal with mites. And then you get into, chemical encouragement. And there's some ways of dealing with chemicals that are more like, what do you call them? Like doTERRA, those essential oil type thing. But I hate to do it. Anything you do, any treatment that you do to your bees is gonna stress them, cost you money, cost you time. So, but I find if I just whistle in the dark with my bees, they die. I just lose a lot of bees. I always tell people when I started beekeeping, my first 5 years, all feral bees. 2014 to like 2019 thereabouts, I was pulling bees from walls and trees, putting them out on rural property and leaving them alone. And they were hybrid scutellata. Mark can tell you more about small cell bees. Not totally resistant to mites. Meaner's not. But at a certain point, I can actually deal with that. I don't mind. I kind of like mean bees in a weird way. They're fun to play with. The challenge for me was managing them. Oh, well, the liability of putting them on your property, right? If you're leasing bees from me, I had a couple of customers get terribly stung up and they said, no mean bees. And so I started buying queens. That meant I had to start dealing with mice. So there's no silver bullet to that problem in bees at all. So right there and then right there.
You showed a slide of the United States and where bees occur,
Yeah.
but not in Mississippi or Alabama.
Oh, the mites. Yes, ma'am. Yeah.
Why not? Yes.
What do you think? Mississippi, Alabama, Louisiana, most Louisiana?
Yeah.
Moisture, water. They're a dry. They do well in dry climates like parts of South Africa and all through Africa. You'll find scutellata, right?
So we need to stay in Florida and South Africa.
So
The non-Africanized are in the rest of the US.
Oh, okay.
yeah,
Those are the Africanized.
correct. Yeah, the spicy bees are in the red zone, right?
Blue is the not spicy.
Blue is the not spicy. Yeah. Yeah. So. Oh, sorry, Claire. Right behind you.
Oh, you had mentioned retweeting the spicy pie.
Yeah, yeah,
That's the demeanor of them.
that's great. That's a great question. The question, how, talk about requeening a spicy hive and how does the queen affect the demeanor of the hive? Well, the hive, the queen is the dimension of the hive. She's the source, right? So her offspring are the hive. So in time, if you take a spicier queen, I know because I do it on the daily. if you take a spicier queen, the beekeepers like to say we pinch the queen. It's a very nice term for murdering the queen. Yeah, smearing the queen across the frame. And a lot of times, if I'm in a really tough hive, and it's hard to find the spicier queens. I find they move really fast. Finding queens is like playing Where's Waldo, right? So if I find a spicy queen, I'll punch her, right? I'm just like smush the whole mess that she's in. Got her. And then you can introduce a more gentle queen. It's also just known genetics. It also might be queen age too. A lot of times we will requeen. Queens can live 4 or 5 years, but I find they're only productive for a year and a half, too. And the old timers say that didn't used to be the case. They used to be able to. So the hive, when you requeen a hive, I find they'll change pretty quickly, right after. But it takes really about a month. The gestation period from an egg to an adult bee is 21 days. So, and she can lay 1,000, 2,000 eggs in a day. So she can take off really quick. But you're going to have the older, spicier bees around for quite a while. So
With the combination of reproduction and maybe the chemicals she's emitting, or just reproduction?
no, just reproduction. It would just be the genes that she lays. Fascinating thing about queens too is that bees. And I'm an English major, so I dabble in science. Citizen scientists, maybe they're genetically. The setup is called haplodiploidy. It means that the males are direct, they're just an egg from mom. The females are an egg from mom and sperm from dad. So it's the boys in the hive don't have a father, and the girls in the hive have a father and a mother, and it's based on the size. That way, a new mated queen can actually mate her half brother, and it won't cause too many problems. Yeah. Fun, exactly. Fun with polyamory and incest. So you can't beat that.
Can you speak to the consumption of honey and any correlation with reducing allergies?
Great question. So I get this question a lot about honey, its effect on allergies. So for many years, I sat in a booth at the New Braunfels Farmers Market every Saturday, and people would come up, and I had people say, "Son, you cured my allergies. You're Charlie Bee Honey," and I said, "Darn it, you need to buy another jar." So. I've seen beekeepers at a farmer's market saying, "Cure your allergies here, let me tell you." I'm cautious about that. I tell people the Charlie Bee Honey promises that our honey helps grow hair and makes you taller and smarter, more attractive. I mean, funnier. Now, there's a lot of interesting research about the health benefits of honey around allergies. And in theory, by eating a small bit of what makes you sneeze will build immunity, right? So there's that factor. But you also have to think that honeybees carry pollen because it needs to be carried. So the things that make you sneeze are windblown, right? So things like cedar, honeybees don't do anything with cedar. I've had my honey tested and had oak pollen in it, which I was like, cool, I didn't know. I mean, they work oak trees. So if you have some oak allergy, there's a lot of research about digestive health, wound healing, all the other products of the hive. There's some interesting things going on with people doing breathing bee air. That's a big one. People build these bee air houses, and you breathe. Yeah. So we're toying with that idea. Bee sting therapy, right? Yeah. Venom therapy. So honeybees have been used for medicine for thousands of years, and so I've put honey on cuts, and that does seem to help. And I mean, you can buy bandages for very bad wounds, and they have products with honey in them. So, and there's all kinds of like Manuka honey is famous for being very expensive.
Have you developed any immunity to the stings? Or do they still bother you just as much as ever?
Good question. So have I developed any immunity to stings? No. I actually, I squeal. No, I get away with getting stung way more. There's so many times where it's like the nemesis out in the bees is the heat. So I'm taking that veil off and I'll brush them away. I'll take a few stings here or there. I am mildly allergic. So I'm either getting less allergic or I'm gonna just keel over one of these days. So no, I don't think you develop an immunity to these things. Like I said, I got tested for venom. I got stung by a wasp in the face and I had a systemic reaction. So there's local reaction. You sting, it swells and it itches, right, for days. There's systemic where you have like hives on your lymph nodes or different parts of your body. That's a systemic reaction. Not good. And then there's anaphylaxis. You can't breathe. That's a bad one, right? I had a systemic. I got stung on the cheek, and I had hives on my lymph nodes. And this was a paper wasp. So I went and I got tested, and my doctor said, "Yeah, you're mildly allergic to honeybees, but you're allergic to yellow jackets and wasps," which I deal with all the time, oddly enough. And she said, "Okay, we'll do venom therapy, but you can't be stung by bees." And how often do you get stung by bees? Like today or so? That's what she said. I'm either building an immunity or I'm gonna get allergic, basically. So, hey, that's the breaks.
Thank you, Charlie, for.
Thank you. I appreciate it. I do have a giveaway. Someone who I speak with, someone who wanted some honey. I do have some honey for sale. If that's okay to hawk my wares here, $20 for a jar. This, we'll do a little quiz. What are the four things? So in order to get called upon, you have to say, "Ooh, Mr. Cotter." If you're old enough to remember that, Chad. So what are the four things that bees bring into the hive?
Bring into the hive?
We have to know all four.
Yep.
Oh,
Ooh, let's see. Water, nectar, and pollen.
Water, nectar, and pollen. That's correct.
she called Brenda.
Phone a friend.
That's some
Sticky.
complications.
Hey, we'll give it to her. Probably.
And we'll be taking a break till quarter after and start the business meeting.